gentlemen, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hey, this is Gabriel Kevin again. Thank you for joining again. Another installment in my suite of tutorials for music, mixing, mastering, recording, and all kinds of stuff. I use Studio One DAW, DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, and a lot or most of my tutorials in the music and in the literary world. I also wrote a novel, found on Amazon, and how I built a novel and stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff on my channel. But these are the music videos, and I have 5 songs out there that are on Spotify and Pandora and also on this channel. So check out those. Those are the master versions. So we go through stuff here, and then you can hear the final product of where it ended up at. So again, welcome. Hope you're having a great day. And this is another tutorial on some of the major plugins that I use. So I have one with Melodyne, which is a pitch corrector, and there's a tutorial on that. There's also another tutorial on Easy Drummer and Easy Keys from TuneTrack, and you want to check that out, because if you don't have a keyboard player or you don't have a drummer, please check it out. Check out my tutorial, but definitely check out the website tunetrack.com. Cool. Now, what other? Now I use I don't use a billion plugins. So I use very specific ones, but I use them in kind of very good detail, and I really exercise them to the most I can get. So one of the major companies that I use that creates some really good plugins is Izotope, and that's spelled Izotope, and you can go to their website. And a couple of the plugins that I use almost all the time is Ozone, which I use the old version, Ozone 5, which I don't know if you can get anymore, if they still have it as a legacy, which I really like. And then they have Ozone 9, which I use. And I do believe I just saw that Ozone 10 is out. But getting to the 2 ozones, the ozone layer, sorry, that Ozone 5, which we're going to see, allows you to put reverb and EQ, multiple EQs, compression, exciters, maximizers, all in one plugin, which is really cool. And that's why I got that years ago, and that's why I still use it, because it's like an all-in-one kind of thing. Then you have Ozone 9, and if you look here to the right, Ozone 9, this one here, Ozone 9, is more of a mastering type of plugin. So look at my mastering tutorial, because you should always master your songs, and I go through concepts of mastering in that. That's what this plugin is used for. Then they also break down, so within this plugin, you can put every one of these plugins below it, kind of like sub plugins. They all are capable of being exercised in this Ozone 9. Or if you don't want to pull in the whole Ozone 9 thing, you can just go in and take dynamic EQ or dynamics, which would be, your limiting and your compression and your gates, exciters, imagers, all kinds of stuff. So I really like Izotope products, and there's so much variety here. So I use Ozone 9 in my mastering. I use some of these other EQs, but what I also use is Izotope Nectar. And Nectar, I have Nectar 2 and I have Nectar 3 because I've upgraded, and so it still retains the original one. And Nectar is for vocals. And I have it here. This is my song called Wonderland Tutorial, and right here are some vocal tracks. Now I've been messing around, so some of the tracks don't have anything on them, but here is where you would drop, you drag and drop, you grab it, you drag and drop it here. If you look at my track tutorial, it gives a more idea of how you can manage your plugins, but I just want to get into the plugin per se. So here we have Nectar on the vocal tracks, and I use that, and the only thing I'll say about Nectar, it's really great. It really is. There's even a vocal assistant there that'll actually listen to your vocal and give you recommendations or presets. And the only thing I'll say about it, it's a little bit performance heavy. So if you have a ton of Nectars, being that you have a lot of vocals, and you're using individual Nectar plugin versions of each one of these, your performance down here is going to start increasing. And if you don't have enough CPU or RAM, you could hit some performance degradation when you do playback. Now, when you mix down, and you mix down in non-real time, it won't matter. It'll still mix it down, because it's not trying to play it through a performance by hitting the play button. So just a word of warning on Nectar. And how I know that, because I got some performance degradation, and I checked out and there's a way in Studio One to check out your plugins and what's being, using up more of the CPU. And I'm like, oh, it's Nectar. There he is, or she is, whatever. And so then I turn them off, and all of a sudden my performance is fine. So then you have to manage it. So you have to be careful. And this is true not just with Nectar. So don't think I'm dissing Nectar. I love it. It's fantastic. Just be careful of it. And there are other plugins out there in the world that are also performance, they use up a lot of performance. And look up, and I don't have a tutorial on it, but look up tutorials on, CPU performance and DAWs, DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, and you'll see a lot about, okay, these plugins are going to drag down your performance and you don't have enough CPU. So either you're going to get more RAM and increase your CPU, okay, and I have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is a lot. Okay, it's not huge, but it's a lot. Either increase your RAM or, reduce the plugins that you're using, which you don't want to do. Or the other thing you can do is you can render your plugins. And that means that you're taking this track and you're going to render it. And when you render it, it actually incorporates the plugin into the track, and the plugin becomes disabled, and then it doesn't use up the CPU. That's great. You save your CPU and your performance, but at the same time, you can't adjust anything in the plugin anymore. So you will generally do that when you're totally sure that that plugin is done. In Studio One, it's called transform, and then you can untransform it and put it back if you need to make changes. So just a word of warning, not just with Nectar, but with all plugins and your CPU and your RAM. Okay, so after all that talk, let's look at Nectar. That's the one I really want to go into now, and then we'll look at the Ozone. So I'm going to double click here on this vocal here to bring up Nectar, and there it is. Now, what's cool about Nectar, and this is why it causes performance, it can cause, I'm not saying it always does, is because if you look here, you have pitch, de-esser, saturation, EQ 1, compressor 1, compressor 2, dimension, which is like flanging and stuff like that, reverb, and delay. That's a lot of stuff. And then you can have this button here, and I can add another EQ, I can add a gate, I can add a harmony. Okay, so you keep adding stuff. Now you can delete stuff here with this X if you don't want this stuff, but in almost all my vocals, this is what it looks like. And so you can see, wow, that's a lot of processing, and it's really cool. So there's a vocal assistant here that you can try, and it'll play through your song, play through your vocals, and it'll set these things to what it thinks it should set to. And then you have presets, so you can pick various presets that have already been created, say for a pop song or for whatever type of song for vocals. Okay, so pitch is on automatically. I always put the de-esser on. Saturation is really cool, and you can look up these individual. I'm not going to go into every detail, but look up saturation, and you go to Izotope. I think it's izotope.com, Izotope, and it'll talk more about this stuff. Or you can just look at general saturation. EQ is pretty straightforward. Compressor and compressor are pretty straightforward, and then reverb and delay. So how does this work? With anything from Izotope, this little I button up here will turn on and off that module. This S here will solo it, so now you put that on, all the other ones are off, and you only hear this, and then you can really fine-tune something, and if you hit the X, it gets rid of it. This little fader here is how much of that compressor is being applied to the vocal, so you can make it all the way down or all the way up, and you can just adjust those. And that would be more easier understood with reverb, right? So here you can raise the reverb overall, or you can lower the reverb. Now, when you click on the box, on the module box, it'll bring up the parameters of that. So if right now it's showing the reverb. So if I want to go to the EQ to see the parameters, I just click on the box, and there's the EQ that's on this track. And if you look at my mixing tutorial, you'll notice that with vocals, I always tail off this section here, because I don't know anybody who could sing that low that's going to have anything down here. That's generally noise. That's ambient noise that's being picked up by the microphone that you have. Compressing, this will have your compressor, and you can move this threshold up and down. So you can watch it as it goes, and you can listen as it goes, and you can adjust it. Same thing here. Okay. Dimension, I'm not using it at this point, but what if we turned it on? Okay. Again, you can add a flange, a phase, a chorus. Really cool stuff. A chorus sound. would be really cool. And then you can actually add chorus sounds to a bass and stuff like that too. So you can use this for even more than vocals, but it's intended initially for vocals. Reverb, you can have your pre-delay, your decay, how long it decays, the width of it, and saturation, how much it's saturating your vocal. And then you have delay, and you have your delay, your feedback, your normal stuff that you would have in any kind of digital delay. So this is like really cool stuff, and I just wanted to do an overview of it. De-esser, de-esser. Here you can listen, you listen to it and you see how you get rid of that. If you have a lot of stuff, and you didn't have a pop screen or a de-esser screen on your mic when you first sang it, and you want to get rid of the S's, this is a de-esser, which is really cool. Saturation. It's you can do analog, or you can do retro or tape or tube. So this is kind of like, if you do a tube sound, that's going to get that real, like it was like a tube amplifier is definitely a different sound than a non-tube, transistor or whatever type of, digital, I don't have the right word, but non-tube amp. And I tend to use almost all tube amps because it has that fat sound. You get a tape sound. So your saturation, it really models your vocal. It's kind of cool. So you put on a Nectar here on one of your vocals and you play around with it and you listen to it and you turn things off and you solo things, and it's really cool. It's just a wonderful, wonderful plugin that you don't have to add 10,000 plugins to get all this stuff. It's all in one. Very cool stuff. Okay, then you have down here your bypass and your match. And match will be match volume. So if you are, if you're increasing any kind of volume or anything or doing something and you hit match and you hit bypass, it keeps the volume the same. So you can, it doesn't, if the volume changes because the plugin is doing something to the volume, maybe it's reducing it because you're putting a lot of compression on it or something. And when you try to hear the EQ and it reduces the volume, it's very hard to make that judgment. So the match will keep it at the same volume when you hit the bypass button. And then you can also take the match off, and that's cool too. Okay, so that is Nectar. Great stuff from Izotope. I would highly recommend using it if you have any other type of vocal plugin that you use, and this is great with vocals. And listen to my songs and tell me if you think the vocals don't sound pretty good. They all have Nectar on them. See down here? They all have Nectar on them. Okay, so, and I played with it a lot, and some vocals, like I might have a real high vocal that I'll change certain EQs on that and everything. And so you can do it by each individual track and then by each individual module. That's why I love this plugin so much. Okay, let's get out of that. Close it. Now, let's see. Do I have Ozone 5 here somewhere? And I do believe I do. And let's see. Ozone 9. Izotope Ozone. I think it's this one here. So on the vocals, yes, it says Izotope Ozone 5. And if I close this over here on the right and I open up this other Ozone, I think that's where my Ozone 5 is, the original one that I bought, and then I added other things. They also have Neutron, and I've never tried Neutron. So if anybody has tried Neutron, I would like to know more about that, and I'd like to try it myself. So I have not tried that. So I use Ozone 9 for mastering and for some individual compression and stuff like that, and like here on these buses. And then I use Nectar, and then I use Ozone 5. And I like Ozone 5, and I'll show you why. Again, I don't know if they still sell it. So I'll double click here on this and let's bring it up. There it is, Ozone 5. Okay, and this was before Ozone 9, obviously called this Ozone 5. Oh, that's so funny. No, it's not. Okie dokie. Now, here is cool. This is what I love about Ozone 5. Okay, so I have an equalizer, and this is all on one track. Now I'm using it on the bus because, well, my bus vocals, I wanted to do a couple things. I wanted to add a little more reverb to all the vocals, and I wanted to increase some air at the top of all the vocals. And I talk about this in my mixing tutorial that you can have plugins on individual tracks, but if you want to overall raise some air on all of them, but every one of their EQs are all like this in different ways, you have to go into each one and adjust them each proportionally in each of your tracks. And if you have 10 vocals, that's tedious, and you're not sure if you're always going to get it right. So if you add, it doesn't have to be Ozone 5, an EQ to your bus vocals, and you assign all your vocals to a bus, and then you can do this, then you can just move this, and it does it to all of them. So you add a little air, and that's always good to do with vocals. And then I added a little more reverb. So I have equalizer, I have reverb. Now this little button that's next to when I click this, it gives me the visual of what's going on. The button next to it is whether it's on or off. So if I turn this off, it'll go gray, and that's off. So whatever I have there is not working. Okay. Now all these other ones you see I have off, but you can add a harmonic exciter. What is that? That's like adding like a tube sound. It's funny. You can say harmonic exciter, and I can say the word distortion. And it's pretty much the same thing. It adds a little. When you add a tube sound and you add this kind of stuff, you want to get that analog sound. If you had a reel-to-reel tape, which I used to have, Tascam TSR-8, before any of this stuff. Try to do that kind of stuff, and bouncing tracks come from the old school. So all this stuff to me is like, this is great, this is great, this is great. But I've been using this stuff for a while. So a harmonic exciter is more like adding tube sounds and stuff like that. So it's really cool. You can go here, and I'll turn it on just so you can see. And there it is. You have the mode is warm, retro, tape, or tube. And as you increase this stuff, it'll get that. It won't really be like a distortion of a guitar. It'll just add that, I don't want to say fuzziness. It adds that tube. If you ever listen to tapes and a tube amplifier, it adds that little bit of background distortion that makes it feel like it's alive. And that's why it's called a harmonic exciter. Now, up here, they look like little flags, don't they? So another thing in Ozone 5 that you can do, and hopefully you can get this or you can find something similar, is you can now set ranges in the EQ range. So I can say, I want to apply harmonic exciter to a certain amount to the low end, and a certain amount to the high end, and a certain amount to the high mid, and a certain amount to the low mid. So you can create all these different ranges, and you can remove them. So if I went on this one, I right click, I can remove that band, and then it'll apply it to here. So when I click here in this band, and I click here in this band, okay, it will change the values, and you can actually put it in any place you want. Have different ranges of stuff. So that's harmonic exciter. I'll turn that off. Get out of there. And then you have dynamics, which is I'll turn that on, which is your eliminating, compression, and gate. Now I would use a gate when you have a vocal coming in. So if you look at my recording tutorial, it talks more about gates, because a gate really cuts the signal. So if the vocalist has stopped singing, if you don't know this already, vocalist stops singing and there's a stand there, but there's ambient noise. So you don't have to keep doing a lot of editing on your track, on your vocal track. If you have a good gate, once they stop singing, it cuts the signal and it's silence. And when they start singing, it opens up the gate. And there's, how fast does it open up the gate attack? How slow or fast it releases it? And that's true with limiting and compressing. Now, if you don't know anything about this stuff, look it up online, tutorials. It's all over the place. It's standard stuff in recording studios: limiting, compression, and gate. Okay. And then here you can just move things down, and it gives you a visual, and you'll see the sound happening right here when you're doing that. And then you can say, okay, I pull it here, and you'll see it pushing the sound down, and you're compressing it or limiting it. So one of them is the threshold, one of them is a compressor, and the other one is the limiter. And as you move it, you can see over here on the side, it's moving it, right? So it's moving the compression, and this one, I believe, is the threshold. Okay. And then you have stereo imaging, which is really cool. So you can really create different things. Look up stereo imaging. I don't use it here right now, but it's really cool stuff. You have post EQ, so you have EQ here, you have all this. This is all happening in a linear way. EQ, reverb, dynamics, stereo imaging, and then post EQ. If all this stuff caused some loss on the high end, you would have a post EQ. So that would be true also in kind of mastering. You have an EQ, you do all this processing, you might have a post EQ, because some of the mastering might have taken away some of the high end cymbal stuff because of the compression, and then you add that high end back in afterwards. So, and then the maximizer would be, you're pushing your volume on stuff. And look at my, again, mastering tutorial. I don't use this. I use Ozone 9, which is the same kind of stuff, but Ozone 9 gives you a lot more flexibility and stuff like that because it's newer. Getting back here, when you have the EQ, you can hit bypass, and that will bypass just the EQ. So when you're hearing something, you go, oh, that sounds cool, and then you hit bypass, and that's what it is without it. That's what it is with it. Then if you have all other stuff happening down here, and you have the EQ on, and you want to solo it, it turns off all the other ones. So you turned off the reverb. And I put it back on, and it puts the other one back on. Okay? So cool stuff, and you have stereo stuff here. It's just cool. So I don't know if you can still get this, but if you can, awesome. It's really cool. It has a lot of stuff in it, just like Nectar does. But if not, then see what else is out there, or you can use the individual ones from Ozone 9. So that's Ozone 5 that I use a lot. But a lot of these techniques and a lot of these functions are not just in Ozone 5. They're, I'm sure, in other plugins, excuse me. So you want to get something sometimes I think that has a lot in one plugin, so you don't have a whole string of plugins that you have to manage. You sit in one place and you do all your work there. If you know of other ones other than Ozone 5 that are like this, or other than Nectar, please put it in the comments and let's share information. Because I promote a community of all of us are working together for the greater good of our music and the music of the world. Wow, what a statement. And I approve this message. Okay, enough of that. Okay, that's Ozone 5. I'll close that out. Now here I have Ozone 9 on my Chuck guitar. So what is this? Double click that. And it's pretty much Ozone 9. It's the mastering. See, it says Master Assistant, and you can look at, again, my mastering tutorial, and it shows a lot more that I do other than this. But I wanted to use the EQ in this because I like it, and that's really funky. I know that curve, and a little bit of maximizing on the overall Chuck guitar. So this Chuck guitar here, I believe I'm going to close this because it's just an EQ and a maximizer, which pushes volume. And on this Chuck guitar, if I click it, there's two guitars. So rather than put that plug-in on both of these, I can just put it on the bus. And it's more apparent here when you say verse guitar. I have multiple guitars happening on the verse because there's some harmony lines that I do with the guitar. And I can then put one plug-in here to govern all of these and not necessarily have to even have a plug-in on the individual ones. I can just do it here because they're all kind of the same sound coming from the same amplifier and same guitar. So it's all subjective. It's all what you want to do. I'm just showing you what I use. Okay, so those are the main plugins I use in terms of the track. I also use other plugins. For instance, Melodyne here, which is really not a plugin that you would put onto a track. It's a vocal pitch corrector, and you look at my Melodyne, because there's a lot of stuff in there. Look at my Melodyne tutorial. You have to highlight a track. Say this is a vocal here, and it's used for vocals mostly. I've actually used Melodyne pitch correction on a guitar solo kind of thing that I felt I didn't bend it all the way in one part to where I wanted to bend the guitar string, but the rest of the play was really good. So I used it there too. And you can do it how much, how tight you want that or how not tight you want the pitch correction to apply. So if I highlight these two events, vocal events, and I come up here to audio, I can hit edit with Melodyne rather than drag and drop it. And it'll bring up this whole section down here where the console is will change to Melodyne. So check out that tutorial. That's another one I use. I also use, like I said, Easy Drummer and Easy Keys and Easy Mix. And the other thing that I do use occasionally is the Harmony Engine. The Harmony Engine. What is that? The Harmony Engine. Well, I'm going to do another tutorial on that because I don't want to take up too much space here. Okay, so the Harmony Engine is a really cool thing that adds harmonies to your vocal. So you could take a vocal track. So say you take, and it'll be in the Harmony Engine tutorial, but just real quick, say you have a lead vocal and you want to add harmonies to it, but you don't have any singers to bring in to do the harmonies, and maybe you're not good at harmonies, or maybe the harmonies that you want are too high for your vocal range, or you just want to play around with it and see what you can do with these harmonies. What it does is you would duplicate your track, and you would do duplicate complete in Studio One, and that's in my track tutorial. And then, so you have your original vocal, and then you have another one that's like it, and then you drag and drop, and it's right here, it's from Antari's Harmony Engine, and you drag and drop that into the track. That will go into the track plugin, and it brings up all this harmony stuff that you can do, like 4-part harmonies or 1-part or 2-part harmonies. And what's cool about it is it's using the same vocal that you have, and you can turn off the vocal in the harmony track, and then it will use that vocal as the basis of the harmony, and then you can just have the harmonies on. So your main vocal's here, it's being played here, but you muted that, and then it has the other harmonies here, and then you can add harmonies to any section of your song, and it's really cool. So check out the Harmony Engine tutorial. Other than that, I hope this was helpful of the main plugins that I use and why I use them. If you have other plugins, I'm sure there's a billion of them out there. Please put them in the comments. I'd like to know. I'd like to know what other people use, and how you use it, and what companies that they are from that you really are really happy with. And let's help each other out. So if you like this and you want to see more of this stuff, because I always have new stuff coming out, this and non-musical stuff, literary, my show, Radical Cathedral, new episodes, please subscribe and you'll get all the new stuff when it comes out. And it's always going to be coming out. And then, if you like it, please like it. And main thing is please share it with people that you know that it might be helpful for them. So please subscribe, please like, and definitely please share. And other than that, have a great, beautiful day. Thank you. Bye.